This guy, on his last day of work, fills up his lunchbox with a whole bunch of shit. The next day, he tries to go across the US border and then go to China. What happens? He gets pulled over and it's found this guy by the name of Conan Yo, who's a 30-year-old scientist coming from Winnipeg's microbiology laboratory, is smuggling 22 vials. He's smuggling 22 vials of Ebola genetic material and trying to take it to China. China, Hong Kong. A 6-year-old Saudi Arabian man comes down with the flu and he dies 6 days later. They assume it's SARS. They don't know. They find the virus and they send it to Rotterdam. They send it there and they study the genome structure of the virus to break it down so they could better understand it. And the lead author comes back and says, there's something unusual about this virus. What? Two scientists facing charges after one of them was caught trying to smuggle highly contagious bacteria out of the country to, you guessed it, China. On multiple occasions, it's been identified China has tried to attain these viruses and different pathogens that roam the earth. And is it for what is it for? What are the reasonings for that they continue to undertake these advanced studies on the viruses, engineering multiple viruses together? And that's exactly what we see. We see the isolation and characterization of a bat SARS-like coronavirus that uses our ACE2 receptor. So SARS attaches to this ACE2 receptor in humans. And as it attaches to this receptor, ACE2 is essentially the entry point for the SARS virus into our bodies. By entering this way, it's able to inflict the symptoms that it does and essentially make a headway or make a front in our bodies before our immune system is able to respond. So in this study, what they did was they took the horseshoe bat, which is found in China, and this bat houses what's called the SHC014, which is a very infectious virus in bats, but is unable to make the transition into humans. And so what did they do? They combined SARS and SCH014, creating a engineered bat virus, or just creating the virus for further study. Either way, this is what we get for the COVID-19, this exact formation of the virus. As these viruses continue to be engineered, it raises a lot of questions for everybody. I mean, they're essentially breeding two viruses together to make a more potent virus, so then we're better able to understand the components of the virus. Hey, that part makes sense, right? In logic, it makes sense. It's like when you have a problem, you got to find the recipe or the structure of what's going to avoid the problem in the future. But then because these pathogens are so powerful and they pose such a huge risk to human civilization, that it's so important that these are treated with the utmost respect and understanding. Now, there's a lot of levels on this, and it comes from the lifestyle, what it's like in China, to the sanitary conditions and the overall setup. But when we look at these viruses, what was identified in these studies is that these viruses have the ability to mutate, and they can mutate in either way. They can mutate to get stronger against our immune system or other animals' immune systems, or it goes the other way, they get weak over time. But what we essentially have seen was they took a virus that's very pathogenic to bats and a very pathogenic virus to humans and combined the two, allowing the bat virus to be attained or contracted by the humans and essentially put us into a stressful position that we're in. Now, I just want to highlight this a little bit more and be a little bit more clear what I was trying to say in my last video about being able to design viruses. Okay, so once they develop the genome structure of the virus, they then understand, they essentially have the full component of the virus. So it'd be like making a drink of water, like, or a multiple layered drink. And essentially what they're able to do is pin or have points that merge together at certain angle or certain receptors on the virus, and they're able to engineer this so they essentially become intertwined. And by doing that, they then create a computer model that's able to replicate all these things, and they can get all the variables that they need to attain if they want to attain certain types of symptoms in the virus. So understand, like this idea of combining two viruses is that much more potential of catastrophe. I mean, and so these are just things we have to keep in the consideration. You know, there's a lot of levels on this, and that's where Dr. Q comes in. Dr. Q, the lead at the Winnipeg Microbiology Laboratory on antiviral and anti-infection research, was able to use this exact process in the development of the vaccine for the Ebola virus. But now we got to understand, as we're fighting harder against these viruses learn. And what are they going to do? They're going to be like a little kid who's trying to get a cookie out of the cupboard. And when you're not looking, they're going to go behind your back. Or when you and your wife aren't looking, they sneak in behind you and they get a cookie, right? But you got to think these viruses on a molecular level, at their level of intelligence, to be able to do that exact thing. That's something that we got to be really concerned about, especially as we move into the future and these viruses even become that much more adapted. And when we look back at the past 20 years and the effect on these viruses, what they have done, and the effects that they've had on economics and population and loved ones and people that are so important to us, it's a really scary thing. And it's just something, and this is why I also promote reishi mushrooms. These reishi mushrooms are amazing for your immune system. I'm not trying to sell anything, but just check out my other video on coronavirus immune booster and how to stay safe out there. Because you know what? In life, there's so many things out of our control, and you never know what it could be to take you over the edge, because it only takes a flick of a second.